Good evening, everyone. It's about 5:42 in the evening. We're going to be going on Talk Shoe with our guest, Edward Henry, here momentarily. We're going to be talking about a fascinating subject tonight. All this preoccupation with anti-Semitism and Congress trying to make rules against speaking against Israel, and boycotting Israel, and the absolute lies of the Zionist churches. And I'm sure Brother Edward Henry will get into the history of that. He wrote a book. He's way ahead of his time on this. He wrote a book back in 2012 called Bloody Zion, refuting the Jewish fables to sustain Israel's war against God and man. So I think it's going to be a very timely discussion tonight. So we'll be going over to Talk Shoe here momentarily and getting the gentlemen all aboard with us. And it should be very interesting. Should be very interesting. So we don't have anybody that's jumped on board yet. It's not a very popular subject people don't want to talk about because they've been bamboozled by the Christian community. All kind of postings on Facebook saying, if you're not with Israel, I'm not with you. Well, I'm not with you if you're with Israel. I'll just tell you right now. If you're with the state of Israel, you're going to be cursed by God because it's Luciferian. When he talks about blessing those who bless Israel and cursing those with curses, he's talking about spiritual Israel. He's not talking about physical Israel. Good evening, Rick Batorik. Welcome aboard. I had sent you an email to validate your address, and I haven't gotten a validation back, so I don't want to send it out if I'm sending it to the wrong address. So if you could go on my regular email, I'm not very good at instant messaging. If you could go on my regular email and let me know, just post your address on there again, and I'll send that book out to you. Good morning, Mark Kennedy. Glad to see you aboard. It's now 5:45. I'm getting ready to go over to Talk Shoe as we speak. So just bear with me for a couple minutes as we get that platform set up. I would appreciate it.
Welcome to Talk Shoe. Please enter your PIN followed by... You are joining the online studio. You are unmuted and can speak with the host.
Yeah.
Recording started.
Good to see you on board with us, Rick and Mark and Ashley so far. It probably is going to be a very lively discussion tonight. Very hot topic with everything going on with the Zionists and all this preoccupation with anti-Semitism in our culture and across the world. It's just gotten to the point where now that our government is almost forcing us to support a foreign entity, and I have no reason to support a foreign entity that's Luciferian in doctrine, none. And so it's going to be persecution for those who come against these Luciferian people. Let's see if we can get here into the back office over here. Wow, everybody's on board already. That's good. Good evening, Brother Mark. How you doing this evening?
Very good, very good. I just got back about half an hour ago from the Long Beach DMV, renewing my California ID.
I see. All right. Well, we're sure glad to have Long Beach Grace Fellowship with us tonight. So,
Me too.
okay. Well,
But
we're also
back in 2012 when I got my ID, it was only $26. Now it's $31.
well, as you go, the price goes up.
Yes. Age tax.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly. Well, we have Tennessee Grace Fellowship with us. Welcome aboard, Carl. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. How about you guys?
We're doing all right. We're doing all right. I mean, I can speak for me. I can't speak for Long Beach Fellowship. He'll have to speak for himself.
I'm doing. God bless you. Love you, brother.
I bet you love you too, Brother Mark. I bet it was a lot of people at the DMV in Long Beach.
Oh yeah, there was a.
Well, I want to also welcome Benny Green, and Ashley is with us, as well as Rick Batorik, and I'm sure we're going to have quite a lively discussion this evening because of what is going on in our culture with this preoccupation by our government and by YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, tweet on anti-Semitism and trying to block people from their free speech and saying that you can't say anything against the state of Israel. Well, I can say anything I want to against any foreign entity. Now, I may be, persecuted for it, but what are they going to do, cut my head off? I don't know, but we'll talk about it. And we're a little early here, so if you guys want to jump in before Ed comes on board, I'm glad to see that Brother Ashley got the book Bloody Zion. And also, I think, if I read somewhere, Carl, I think you got your copy today too, right?
Yes, sir. I sure did.
Good.
Sure did.
Well, it's quite a book. It's quite a read. I think one of the most telling chapters in the book. Well, it's all good, but I find that one of the ones that I guess really nailed me more than any of the maybe is the one about on chapter 6, because that's kind of what we're dealing with, the dispensational Zionism. I still have to pinch myself to see how many people are posting things on Facebook Live that are just, they're really showing their ignorance, Of course, people show their ignorance on Facebook Live all the time. But I think there was probably about 15 or 20 in the last 2 days saying something to the effect, if you tell me you're against Israel, I'm against you. And if you tell me that you're not supporting our greatest ally, I have a problem with you. You probably ought to unfriend me. And all kind of stuff like that. People are so reactive.
Yeah.
People are so reactive anymore, It's like they're just kind of flying by the seat of their pants. They don't think things out. They just, I do that at times, especially if you're in the heat of the moment, and you want to make a point with someone. I used to, do that a lot on email. And then the good Lord said, hey, wait a minute, Larry, don't just react as soon as you see an email to what you think. Give it a little time, think about it, pray a little bit about it. And then after you let your emotions kind of come down a little bit, then if you want to respond, that's fine. And so I've had to learn the hard way because, it's our very nature that we want to, it's like I've often said, if you have a dog in the backyard and he's chained and he's in his doghouse and the neighbor dog comes in and starts taking over his territory, he's going to come out of that doghouse and start protecting his territory. And that's what I think how a lot of Christians view it. You're stomping on my territory. So anyway, I don't think it's biblical, but we don't always act. We don't always respond in a biblical way. So
Yeah. It's very interesting because the Jews supposedly went through the Holocaust. The modern people want to give them a pass on being accused of doing anything in the wrong in the modern world, it seems like.
right.
I find that very interesting.
Yeah, it's I hate to say it because it sounds very, I guess because we use this phrase a lot. As I was coming up, my dad used it all the time, but it has so much truth to it, and that is follow the money trail. I mean, you look at AIPAC, and who they're supporting. And, when you get into the money, in fact, the chapter 14 in this book, The Love of Money is the Root of All Evil, he touches on all the money involved in political action committees and all this stuff. So let me see if, let me just go over and see if Brother Ed's joined us yet. He's not there yet. Anyway, yeah, I find that to be a very interesting thing going on. I've heard people also say that this is all, or we should be supportive of anything that's going on because we should support anything that's going on because God ordained it all. Now, if that isn't some twisted logic, in other words, let us sin so that grace will abound.
Right.
And they seem to be calling evil good and good evil, and I don't know. I got that a lot when I was in the Sovereign Grace churches. They would not even talk about these things. I distributed Brother Ed's book, Anti-Gospel, to, I think, 7 or 8 Sovereign Grace ministers, and only one of them said it was a good book out of the 7. But you know what? That person wouldn't even talk about in other words, he talked about it briefly in his own pulpit, but to my knowledge, he wouldn't go out and endorse the book out in amongst the other people because he knew they did not endorse. First of all, a lot of people eliminate Edward Henry because of his position on cosmology, biblical cosmology. So they throw the baby out with the bathwater because they support heliocentrism and a globe. Anyone that doesn't, they consider to be a loony. Okay, and so they'll just throw them out with the bathwater over that issue. And Mark, you and I have seen that as well. So, and I know Brother Carl has seen that as well in his travels. So anyway, that's basically what's on my mind on that issue. A lot of history in this book. I mean, you can just kind of go through it. You could just start looking through the book, thumbing through it, and it's like, wow. And I'm thinking, Ed, where do you get the time to do all this research on all these books? I mean, this Bloody Zion, I mean, it has references starting in on page 429 and goes all the way through to 539. So that's over 100 pages of references. And he has the same kind of references in Anti-Gospel as well as Mystery Babylon and 9/11. So he's here. He's just come on board here. Let me unmute his mic. Yeah, we're just talking behind your back, Brother Ed, about where can you find all the time. Of course, I know you've been writing books for many years. I was just looking in the, I find it interesting because you wrote Bloody Zion in 2012, and you did Mystery Babylon. What was that, back in 2000 and 2000 and I'm just looking here. 2010.
I don't remember.
2010 was the first time. I can see why Bloody Zion followed Solving Mystery Babylon the Great. That's pretty a pretty logical course. Welcome aboard tonight, and I think this is going to be a very, very interesting discussion. And I know that Brother Carl and Brother Mark will have questions and comments, and I'm full of them. Of course, you know, it's just easing out all over the place with me after going back through this Bloody Zion again. What was it that really opened your eyes to see the significance of this issue of the problem with the dispensational churches, and they're actually blindly leading the blind on this path of God's chosen people lie, which is brought about spending billions and billions of dollars in what people describe as our greatest ally. And I'm trying to figure out how that can be. But what was it that brought, at the outset, I think you shared once that it's really a course of discovery and doing the research on the Roman Catholic Church, and then looking at the origins of it, and looking at the Jesuits, and then going further back, and then tracing things back. What was it though? Can you kind of go into that a little? What brought you into this aspect of even writing Bloody Zion?
Well, it all started with my research of the Roman Catholic Church. As you know, I came out of the Roman Catholic Church, and I read away. Once I was saved, I immediately saw the evil of that organization. And so then I began in earnest to study of the Roman Catholic Church. And really, this was before the internet became the resource that it is today.
Uh-huh.
And so I was actually going out to Roman Catholic bookstores and actually buying the source documents, the
Wow.
Council of Trent, the catechisms, their religious books, and I was going through them and trying to find original source material. And then it was the middle to latter part of the 1990s that the internet started to come into fruition as a source for information. And wow, what a resource!
Yeah.
So I could get original source materials, and it was like having the Library of Congress at your fingertips. So how amazing was that? And so that gave rise to the first book I actually wrote was Antichrist Conspiracy. And that I had posted online, and I didn't know at the time, that there was such thing as PDF. And but then I discovered how to do it slowly but surely. And I was sharing it with my elderly aunt, who's now deceased. And this would have been back probably shortly after 1995, I think, right around there, between 1995 and 2000. In any event, I'm sharing this with her, and she said, well, I don't read books off the computer. You're going to have to send me a hard copy. And it was out of necessity to get her a printed copy that I discovered how to publish hard copies. And I actually was able to do it in literally one night.
Wow.
I went online and figured out, and it was by necessity, because I realized the book is over 300 pages in length, and it's 8.5 by 11, And so it's a lot of material. And I knew that if I had it printed, it would cost me an arm and a leg.
Right.
And so being as cheap as I am, I thought, you know what? It's cheaper for me to publish it as a book. So I actually did that and sent it off to her. And that was my first publishing experience. And so it was from then that I wrote after that. And that's still online. People can download that. It's a free download, the Antichrist Conspiracy.
Okay.
And it's basically the initial introduction to all of these many issues. But I started digging deeper because after writing that book, and as I was writing that book, actually, I kept bumping into this synergism between Roman Catholicism and Judaism. And there seemed to be, every time I turned around, a subterranean Jewish influence within the Roman Catholic Church. And I know it, okay, but I didn't understand the significance of it until I started peeling away the layers. And I started doing a historical study and looking at historical documents. And then I realized that, in fact, the Roman Catholic Church is a Gentile front for Judaism. It is basically Judaism for Gentiles. And what happened was, early on, the Jews tried to